A lot of why I'm a photographer is a great window in the living room at the house that I grew up. And it looked out onto the forest, out to the stream where I love to wander. So I could sit at that window for hours and just stare and just look. And, that's a rectangle. And that's a lot about, I think, why I'm not only a photographer, but why I use an 8x10 view camera, because it's that window and it's that rectangle shape. So a view camera is a box. It's a lens on one end and a ground glass on the other end. And no electronics in it, no mirror, so the image is upside down and backwards when you're looking at it on the ground glass. But it's a wonderful window, this 8x10 rectangle. It's just this great screen that I look at. It's a little monitor out there of the world that you can see. So what I like about using the 8x10 is that it gives me a large negative, and from that, lots of detail. But more than that is the way I use an 8x10 camera is a very slow, thoughtful process, and it's really, it's just my way of working, the slow look at the landscape. And so this camera is that process for me. It gives me that slow look. I've always wanted to make a photograph of birds, but with an 8x10 camera, I wasn't quite sure how to do that because an 8x10 is not so much an action camera. But I also knew that there were these people, bird banders, that will band a bird. It's for tracking purposes, and they can study the population. And I figured, well, if they have to hold the bird to do that, measure them and weigh them, then maybe they'd hold it for me with my 8x10 camera. I just was interested in the bird itself, so I started out with these fairly close-ups of the birds because the color is so incredible in these birds, and they're just so amazing. It was not long before I knew that the people had to also be just as important in this. So then they began to be just as much portraits of these people as they are about the birds. There's this moment of the release when they send the bird back, and that became really central to me as well. Because to me, my photographs are also always fairly personal. They come from a very personal space, and so the bird pictures, I was making those at the same time my mother was failing with Parkinson's, and she had a bit of dementia with that. And my mother would often sit there as we'd be talking, but she'd start reaching up. So at one point I just said, "Mom, what are you reaching for?" Right away without any hesitation. It's like no dementia at all, just no hesitation. "Oh, the birds." So I'm making these pictures of these birds, and then this release moment with people going like this with sending the bird back, and here's my mom reaching for these things, and she's reaching for the birds. At the same time I saw the show at the Met, which of Fra Angelico, and in those paintings he's full of saints. Often there's a bird flying around, but the saints do a lot of palm gesture. So all this stuff was sort of swirling around in my consciousness when I was making these bird pictures. The triptych of Beth was one of the release pictures. So I'd set up this triptych and just said, "Okay, Beth, just release." And then I just had one chance, to click that shutter at the right moment. I'm interested in just looking and observing the world in a curiosity kind of way. And I think as photographers, that's what we do. We just really deeply observe something.